And Lee, I will pass it over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Meredith, for that introduction. I hate to ask this, but can everyone see my screen? Okay. I'm sure you all are tired of hearing that question, but like Meredith mentioned, I'm a designer. Depending on the day and the job listing, it obviously varies, right? There are so many labels for what we do, but I'm really excited to be giving this presentation. This was supposed to be an in-person event, and I was supposed to be down in Houston eating all of your food, but unfortunately that's not happening, but still I'm happy to be here. So I'm excited to give this presentation because I think a lot of people's career plans were upended when the pandemic hit, and it gave a lot of people time to start thinking about where they want their career to go, right? And so I actually started this presentation because my former manager, he had asked me during our one-on-one, where do you want to be a year from now, right? And that because I'm someone who's very much motivated by action items, I wanted to think about a tangible plan that could actually yield me results. And so I put this framework together and started sharing it on one-on-one calls with other designers in the general Hexagon group. So I'll be sure to send the template out after my presentation, but I'll go ahead and get started. So just to be upfront, the design of this presentation is not mine. I don't know if you all have heard of Zach T. Studio, but he used to work for Square and he creates presentation decks. And so he made this on Figma and I just kind of duplicated it and started filling in, my own words. But this is essentially what you would, and I'll be sure to share this afterwards. This is essentially what you would present to your manager, right? So just a very like basic introductory slide. And because I cared about results and being able to measure my progress, this presentation starts off very vague, right? Super high level. So the first slide is a one-sentence description of where you currently are in your career. Just to be completely transparent, I don't currently work at the company that I was at when I presented this framework, but just for the sake of not making things complicated, I'll be presenting as if I'm still there. So my one-sentence description for the slide was, I am a junior UX designer who wants to explore more disciplines of design and grow into a confident leader. And so when you first hear that, it sounds very vague, right? But like I said, you kind of start honing in on actionable steps that'll actually take you where you want to go. And so I thought it was super important to remember why I was doing product design to begin with. So this slide kind of acts as a reminder to you to kind of keep you excited about going to work. So currently I'm motivated by blank, and you kind of have to start asking yourself like, well, why does this motivate you? What do you care about? Why do you come to work every day? So for me, what that looked like was, currently I am motivated by people finding value in the things I create, right? I care about helping people rest. I see the value that taking a break contributes to people's lives, and I want to make it easy for them to do that. So in a country where people brag about working 60-hour weeks and never seeing their families, I want to help them take a vacation. I think this motivation was heavily influenced by my upbringing in Silicon Valley. I wasn't born and raised in Dallas. I was born in Vietnam, and we immigrated to San Jose, California, when I was 3 years old. And so being surrounded by so much technology, I was like, wow, this is super exciting. But then, you read articles of founders and CEOs who are like, I don't know my kid's name. We're all about growth. These are the profits that I made, right? And I thought that was super unhealthy. It was this slide, or my motivations were also influenced by my study abroad experience in Copenhagen, right? So that was in 2017, right before It was before I graduated from UC Santa Barbara. And while I was in Denmark, people got in at 9 a.m. and they left at 5 p.m. on the dot, right? When I first started, I was like, like the office is getting empty. Like, can I leave at 5 p.m. too? And I remember my mentor being like, yeah, go. What are you still doing here? And it'd be like 5:10 p.m., right? And so I had to relearn what healthy work-life balances were. And so coming back to the US, when I graduated and I started my job hunt, a question that I always asked was, does your company have a healthy work-life balance? And a lot of times startups would be like, this probably isn't the company for you. Whereas larger ones were like, yeah, we really respect that. And so I viewed my employment at Apple Leisure Group as a way to kind of help foster that, right? To encourage people to take vacations and take time off and kind of focus back on what's really important to them, which is like time with their loved ones or just time by themselves. So then the next slide. So what are my values, right? I think this is a really important internal and external conversation that our community needs to have right now. So I strive to be blank by doing blank. What influences your values in your work? What communities do you want to better serve? What is an example of the kind of work that you don't want to do? And like what's work that you do want to do? So what this looks like for me is I strive to be inclusive by ensuring that my designs are accessible while being mindful of the impact my design has. When you hear that, oh my gosh, there are a lot of buzzwords, right? Like inclusive, accessible, mindful. Yeah, okay, Lee, we're still skeptical, but we'll hear you out. So my part right here, what influences your values, was everyone should be able to travel and rest, right? But they shouldn't have to jump over hurdles to do so. And for those who fall outside of the majority and who may not have products typically tailored to them, I want to make sure their needs are met. And some specific examples of this would be, we had offered vacation packages to Rome or just, different parts of Europe. And if you're someone who is dependent on a wheelchair, well, wouldn't it be helpful to have maybe a list of places or a feature that kind of tells you, hey, this country or this city has a lot of cobblestones. It's not accessible for people. Or another example is, I got married last September, right? And following the ceremony, my wife and I were considering, well, where do we want to go for our honeymoon? We want to make sure we're safe, right? But that was a lot of research that we had to do on our own. So wouldn't it be helpful to have a feature or a page or a tool that could show us, for LGBTQ people, these are the places that you could go to. You could hold hands in public, right? You can walk around safely without fearing for your lives. Like that would have been very helpful for us. And an example of the kind of work that I don't want to do, I want to make sure that my work isn't detrimental to the user, right? So I think someone had written about this, but incorporating worst case scenarios in your product design. How could your work be harmful to others, right? So infinite scrolling is an example. I'm sure that the person who invented this feature or behavior, they didn't think that people were going to spend hours of their time, that it was going to be adopted and people were going to spend so much time on social media, right? Like there's that term that's come up, doom scrolling, right? You're up at 3 and you're reading about all of these horrible things happening around the world. So unlike newspapers, there's no end. It's a rabbit hole and you can go all day and night on like reading. And the case of like spreading misinformation, I want to make sure that whatever work I do from here on out doesn't encourage that. And so another specific example, I remember scrolling through Facebook and a middle school friend of mine had shared an article, and it was like someone was just mugged or robbed or whatever, and we're still looking for the robber, he's on the loose. And so I clicked through the article and it was from 2012. It was 8 years ago, and my friend had shared it this year. And so that's really dangerous, right? To not have, I know a lot of UX designers, and I think like a trend is to have frictionless design, right? But if you don't put up little check-ins or like roadblocks, you know, for lack of better words, then that can get really bad really fast. And so if it had started, if this article that my friend shared had started another media frenzy, it could have been a waste of resources, attention, because the robber had already been arrested, right? This was something that was already solved. So I want to make sure that the work that I do, it incorporates that worst case scenario thinking. Okay, so the next few slides like really excite me because I think that's when you can like really hone in on things that you're strong at and things that you can improve, right? So as I included right here, the high five test, they give you your top 3 strengths. And for me, what I did with my own slide was I just copied and pasted the paragraphs that they gave and put them right here. And so mine were, the first strength of mine was timekeeper, right? And so the second one was storyteller, and the third one was enthusiast. So I don't know if you all have already picked up, but I'm a really excitable person. And so this was, my former manager started like teasing me about it because he would be like, oh, Lee, there's like someone left brownies in the kitchen counter. And I'd be like, oh, and he started anticipating a gasp from me for every little thing. Like it was just right on cue, and he loved my enthusiasm. And so this came up a lot in different one-on-ones and like performance reviews. And so a lot of people outside of our own team picked up on that. And yeah, it was great. But the next slide is opportunities for improvement, right? I'm not a big fan of calling it weaknesses, just because it doesn't have to be something that you're absolutely terrible at, right? Like, so for example, and these you kind of write up yourself. You don't take a test or anything for it to generate your results, but you really need to start thinking of like specific examples, right? So for me, my opportunity number 1 was presenting. And so this is an actual blurb that I wrote. I presented my own work at my first design meeting last Thursday. It went well because it helps to have supportive managers, but I would like to learn how to present with more structure, right? And so when speaking about the UX team's design work, I found that because I didn't have a structure, so like, this is the issue we're trying to solve. This is the testing that we did. When I didn't have that in place, I mean, it was a mess, right? And so opportunity number 2 was communicating. What I wrote was, while I am energetic and decent at maintaining attention with my excitement, I tend to ramble and veer off on tangents, right? So again, if I didn't have this framework in place to present to you all tonight, I mean, this would be a mess. You all would be like, leave meeting, probably like by this point. And then the last one, opportunity number 3 was problem solving. So I'm task-oriented and efficient at execution, but I struggle to think of ideas and solutions. I'm good at identifying problems, but not so much with follow-up, right? And earlier, Meredith, in her introduction, she had mentioned that I have experience at a medical marketing agency, right? And so my background, I would say, is largely graphic design. And for graphic design, I mean, people aren't really interacting with it, right? It's not a product that they download into their phone or laptop. For me, I was very much designing like posters, business cards, just visual things where like once the event was over, you take it down, right? And so something that I really struggled with was strategy, right? I would sit, when I started, I would sit in these meetings and I wouldn't really have any solutions to give. They would have results from our A/B testing up on the board, and I would just kind of sit there silently, and I felt it made me feel bad, right? Like you don't want to sit in a meeting and feel useless. And so these were the things where I didn't think they were weaknesses of mine, but I could definitely try to improve on them. So now moving toward, like, once you've identified all of these things, you can kind of start putting different goals that you can measure and that'll help you get there, right? So for me, goal number 1 was to address my lack of strategy know-how, goal number one was to just attend a product workshop. So living in Dallas, and I don't know if it's the same for Houston, but living in Dallas, we have this thing called Product Camp, and they often put on different events, right? We'll analyze case studies, or it'll be like a fun workshopping thing that we could do together. But I just wanted to attend one of those because I thought like it would help me move a little closer towards my goal, right? Towards like expanding that muscle. My second goal was to teach a design class. I grew up in a low income household. And so the fact that I even had a laptop and was able to learn how to code and design and everything, like a lot of people don't have those opportunities. And so what I wanted to do was go to a middle school or a high school and kind of talk to students who might have an interest in UX design and talk them through like, oh, well, these are the problems that you have the potential to solve. These are the processes that I use at my company. And I felt that having this as a goal would not only allow me to share my knowledge to, a field that might be inaccessible to others, but it also gave me a chance to practice communicating. And then goal number 3 was to specialize in a discipline. So earlier, my very first slide, it sounded very vague, right? I wanted to explore different disciplines of design, but there are so many things that this career encompasses. You could, specialize in like prototyping, in user research, in information architecture. That was actually my manager. He specialized in information architecture, while another coworker of mine specialized in visual design. And so I wanted to hone in on something. I really enjoyed attending the UX research conference in Toronto, Canada in 2019. And so when I was developing this framework and kind of thinking about my own career trajectory over the next year, I was like, well, I really like talking to people. And I saw that user research gave me many opportunities to do that, right? So after setting my goals, now you kind of start focusing on like, okay, well, here's an end. What are the means to get there? And like I said, this was developed while we didn't have a pandemic going on, but I think you all have realized that a lot of conferences have pivoted to taking place online, right? So that research conference that I mentioned that took place last June, I mean, they completely went online this year in about 2 weeks. I received a scholarship to attend Clarity, and so I'll be attending that virtually, but still, like there are still opportunities, right? And I'm aware that not everyone has the budget to be able to send their employees somewhere, or even like, I mean, Clarity without the scholarship, it was $600, right? And that could still be inaccessible to a lot of people. And so a smaller, more budget-friendly way that you can accomplish your goals is to find some online courses that you want to take and pursue them, right? So I think the financial strain of online courses is a lot better than, attending a whole conference, because it encompasses so many days. But for example, if I wanted to learn more about front-end development, a really great resource was Super High's foundational HTML, CSS, and JavaScript course, which I did do, and it was great. I can't recommend Super High enough. But yeah, like I also found IDEO offered a designing strategy course, Insights for Innovation, and then if I wanted to learn React, right, to better develop design systems, then there's designcode.io, which is React for designers. But again, not every company or every individual has financial resources for these courses, because I think I purchased my course from Super High for like $324, and not everyone has that. And so you can kind of start with home base. And this is like, I don't want to make it sciencey, but like at the molecular level, right? Like if you don't have resources for, big name conferences, or even these courses that could be like $360 per course, then there are some things that you can do in your employment on your day-to-day to kind of help you grow towards your goals, right? And so an example for me was, number one was to schedule a one-on-one with someone on a different team every 2 weeks. Because I am a very extreme person, I was like, oh, let's just throw in 2 here, 3 on Tuesday, 4 on Wednesday. Like, I really just, it got out of hand, and I was reserving a lot of rooms actually, because I was doing this while we were still in the office. And so you don't need to be like me. You can just do it once every 2 weeks. And an example of this would be like, while I'm on the UX team, I work very closely with product managers and developers, right? But we had people from sales, from merchandising, from finance. And so I made it a point to just schedule like 30 minutes with them. And I was like, can you kind of tell me about what you do and how it factors into like the business as a whole, right? So I was able to kind of also act as like, I wanted to close the knowledge gap, because there were also some people who had been there for like 6 to 8 years. And when we met, they were like, can you tell me what the UX team does? And I was like, what? My manager has been here for like 5 years, you know? And so I'm developing those relationships. And I want to also add that if you're having a one-on-one and you don't like care to learn about like the name of their dog or the food they like to eat, then you can, the one question that you probably should ask is, what am I able to go to you for, right? Like, if you know so much about finance or merchandising, like what topics do you feel comfortable with me asking you about? So that was super helpful and helped me develop a lot of relationships. The second thing was, I am a very inquisitive person, and that's actually why my former company hired me, because during the interview process, like, it got to a point where they were like, I'm sorry, Lee, are we interviewing you or are you interviewing us? Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't mean to interrogate you. but that's how it felt for them. And they liked that I asked so many questions. So you could set, you know, a tangible goal of maybe like 1 question per day about, you know, a team or a specialty that you don't really know about. The third thing was to prototype designs even when it wasn't required, right? So going back to specializing in a discipline, if I really wanted to get better at prototyping and like, you know, micro interactions, then I would use InVision or Principle or Figma to not only learn those tools more, but, you know, you can also, like, when you're doing user testing, it's more helpful for the person who is going through the test, right, to visualize what the final product could be like. And so that was a goal that I had, and I was able to start doing it, but then the pandemic happened, and then, yeah, we all had to regroup. The fourth thing was to volunteer to present my own design work more often. So when I initially started, it was understandable for my managers to kind of set the scene for me, right? So they would, in a meeting, they would say, okay, so this is what Lee has been working on, and these were the constraints that she had, and this is the goal that we were trying to accomplish. And it was really helpful, but I can't improve on presenting or communicating if my managers are always kind of helping me, right? And so I wanted to challenge myself for any project that I finish to kind of take initiative and just go about presenting myself. And then the action number five, I intentionally left blank in my own presentation. So it was just like a question mark, right? Because up until this point, I would be kind of talking about my own goals and my own career trajectory with my manager. But I wanted to kind of put the ball back in his court. And then I would ask him, so what do you think, since you've been here longer, what do you think is something I can do to improve, you know, my design process, or to get closer to my goals? And then it stops becoming a presentation, but it's more of a conversation, right? And so after that, this is just, oops. it's just the thank you slide. So here's where I got the slide design from. But yeah, after we wrapped up my one-on-one where I discussed my career goals, then I sent the PDF to my manager. And once every 2 months when we had like a longer check-in as opposed to the biweekly one, when we had the longer check-in, he would ask, oh, okay, like, how do you think you've done in trying to get to this point, right? Like, have you done this course, or where are you now in like in your prototyping abilities? And so, yeah, I mean, this has been really helpful. And even though I'm currently unemployed and actively looking for a job, I mean, the sentiment still stands, and I'm still using this framework as a way to, get me to where I want to be in my career. So yeah, I hope I offered enough examples for you all to kind of, as we move into this individual and as well as group activity, a good foundation for you all to start off with. Thank you. And this is where you can reach me. I am very active on Twitter, so if you want to talk, hit me up there. But yeah, and thank you, Meredith, for giving me an opportunity to improve my presenting abilities.
Michelle, I am on Twitter. I just don't use it. Michelle is our most active Twitter member, so I'm sure she's probably already following you
yeah.
as we speak. Well, I definitely want to open it up for questions. I kept an eye on the chat and none have popped up yet, but anybody feel free to unmute and ask your question live or drop it in the chat and I can make sure that Lee gets it.
Mm-hmm.
And I will kick us off with a question. What kind of pushback did you get from your manager when presenting this? And did you have to make any adjustments in order to feel like you got buy-in and were able to move forward?
I think the only pushback was regarding the conferences, because some of them took place in, some of the ones I had listed, they took place in Dallas, but like, other ones took place in like London or Seattle. And I actually didn't even attend any of the ones I had written. I actually went to Convey UX in Seattle. And this was this past March when they were like the epicenter of coronavirus cases in the US. I mean, they hadn't canceled yet. And so I was like, it's safe, but, but yeah, I think that was the only pushback. Like, he only expressed hesitation because it was like a lot of money, right? And it's an investment. But yeah, I was able to learn more about like journey mapping, learnings that I brought back that we could apply. Because there was someone from like Alaska Airlines and who was also in the travel industry. And so they really enjoyed that.
Haley, Jane here. Love your examples and just how proactive you're showing yourself in seeking out these opportunities. I guess the question is for somebody who may not fully understand their opportunities. What's a great way to work with the managers or work on their own to discover or even reframe in how they can share those opportunity or weaknesses without fearing kind of getting a reprimand from their managers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. So I think I'm going to answer your question in two parts, right? Like, so the first I heard was finding these opportunities to begin with, and the second one was kind of expressing opportunities for improvement without getting reprimanded. And so the first one, okay, like I said, I love Twitter. A lot of the scholarships that I find, they're from Twitter. I once got $500 for free from Twitter. So yeah, if there's any platform that I'm gonna stick to, it's that one. So, but yeah, I am very active in like different Slack groups, right? So that's actually how Meredith and I met, because someone had posted in the mentorship channel that was like, does anyone have like a career framework or something? And I was like, I have just the thing. And so, I commented on her thread, and then I thought I would just talk to her and share this framework with her. But in the end, I had 22 one-on-one calls with different people. And so that was really exciting, right? That opportunity, just being in the Slack group and seeing that message allowed me to like deeply practice my presenting skills. I learned that 30 minutes wasn't enough and that I needed to expand it to 45 minutes so that they could learn more about me, right? But it's like, I think I'm very much involved in like different communities. And on Twitter as well, because I'm a pretty outgoing person, I feel comfortable asking random like people questions. I feel comfortable DMing people when they're like, who wants this for free? That's how I got several free books, and like a bag of coffee. So it was, my wife is always like, are you sure this is safe? And I'm like, yeah, come on, it's fine. Like, these are my internet friends. But we've gotten a lot of stuff for free. And so I think just making it a point to, like reach out to people a little bit more. And then to answer the second part of your question, like I said, I think there would be more of a negative connotation, like during the meeting, if you used the word weaknesses. But I guess, like I said, the ones I picked were things that I thought I was already good at. And so it's like, hey, manager, like these are 3 things I'm good at, but I know I could be better. So can you help me like work towards that goal? Because like when they have my goals in mind, then it's like if a project comes up and they need someone who's really on top of scheduling, right? Timekeeper was one of my strengths. If they need someone who's really interested in user research, and I had expressed that one of my goals was to pursue that discipline further, then it's like, oh, we could put Lee on this project, right? And so what is it? People keep saying like it's like manifesting, right? I'm just gonna put this out there. I hope to like win an Oscar by age blah, blah, blah. And I think it happened with the director of the like Pixar or something animation movie. And he ended up winning, like, I believe an Oscar for that animated short. And so just putting, your intentions and your goals out there and making sure that you're constantly communicating it.
That's a good point. Like, it doesn't have to be something you're completely sucky at. It could just be an opportunity for growth. So I like that reframe a lot. That's good.
Yeah, exactly. Good. Great questions.
Question.
Thanks, Jane.
I don't know if the company where you were when you developed this, what their framework, I guess, was for core values, but that's something I've been using with my manager of backing up my strengths and opportunities to core values, and using that kind of as a baseline of directing the ways I want to grow. So ask around if you have that as a toolkit, I guess. Madeline posted a question in the chat. So she says that she is a student and is curious to know, when you were new to UX, how did you kind of get your foot in the door, and what was an effective method for communicating your strengths at that time without the experience, probably?
Yeah, I think, so since middle school, I've always known that my passions were design, photography, and film, right? So while I was in high school and college, I always made it a point to have like very design-centric jobs. So now, for the most part, they were like graphic design, right? But when I was picking a city to study abroad in, I actually picked Copenhagen because of how much they value design. And there were a lot of design studios there that were doing the things that I wanted to learn more about. And so I don't know, I am someone who like relentlessly pursues, so that's the problem with me. I have so many project ideas in my head that I'm like, oh my God, just for today, can you please focus on one? Can we not try to juggle like 3 different forms of media? And so getting my foot in the door, it was just a matter of, oh, you know what? Okay, here's a great example. So while I'm interviewing for jobs right now and applying for jobs, right, getting my foot in the door, to me, I it was just last Thursday that I thought of this. But I was like, I'm not getting a lot of response on my like LinkedIn applications or like job applications in general, right? We need to take a different approach. And so what I did was, like for example, I applied for a designer one position at USAA. And what I did was I just kind of went to the LinkedIn search bar and I typed in design USAA Dallas. And so a lot of people come up, and I individually messaged all of them, and I was like, hi, I just want you to know that I applied for this role, and I would love, like 5 minutes of your time. I just have a few questions about the design process or culture at USAA. And so some people responded, others like maybe like directors or managers, they were a little bit more busy. But in reaching out, it's like you could be talking to someone who might appear during your interview process, right? While you're meeting like fellow designers and people you could be working with. Or I just wanted them to kind of like familiarize themselves with me, and they liked that I showed this initiative, right, to learn more about the opportunity before really like going through the process. And so they saw it as, okay, not only did she apply, but she went out of her way to learn more about like me as a manager or more about the team. And so just going about that and asking for like, hey, how do you think I can improve on this? Or how do you think, I can get closer to my goal of like working here? Someone I didn't know actually messaged me a few days ago on LinkedIn, and she was like, hey, Lee, I noticed that you majored in film and media studies at UC Santa Barbara. Can I ask about your transition into UX design? How did you do it? And so it's just that, right? Like I shared resources with her. I was like, hey, here are some courses that you can take. But also here are some people you should follow or like email. I've talked to them myself. And I know that they'd be really willing to help. I just have so many resources I want to share, but another one is called Out of Office Hours. I don't know if any of you are familiar, but they connect newcomers to more seasoned people in the tech industry. And it's engineers, product managers, UX designers, and you sign up and they'll just pair you up. So I started participating in this program, this like mentorship program, in fall of 2017, and I've kept in touch with so many of my mentors, and they'll give me my friends at like my friend who works at Spotify, he'll be like, okay, well, this is how we do it, and if you're trying to solve that problem, these are the things that you should look at, right? Like he has a lot of valuable insights to share because he's already practicing it at Spotify. And so I'll be sure to send that to Meredith so that she can send it to all y'all. But yeah.
We have another question in the chat. So Rusher asks, as a UX designer during this pandemic year, what are some of the positive things, opportunities we have, and how do you get design inspirations while at home for such a long time?
I love those questions because, so the first one, I think, like I mentioned earlier, I really wanted to learn front-end development, and it was something that I always put off. I was like, no, I'm working on this. I'm going to school. Like, I just don't have time to learn front-end development. But like, because I was laid off, I was like, okay, well, I need to make myself a more like viable candidate, right? And so, in looking at these courses, I was like, this seems like it's so super high. What I love about them is that it feels like they're very tailored for visual learners. I tried learning, front-end development years ago, and I just kept trying and trying. But, with Free Code Camp, I just don't think it's very friendly for people who like, I don't know, I didn't know where my code was messing up, right? I didn't know if I was typing the syntax properly. But with Super High, they have a visual editor. And so I finally made the time, because I had the time, to go through the course and build these projects that were like floating around in my head for so long, right? So that's definitely a positive. I've been able to help organizations that I'm a part of by doing some like freelance UX consultations. And so I mean, I'm really shocked at the amount of people who have been needing like logos and websites for their businesses right now, but I'm grateful for the work, right? So I'm able to help my friends and, you know, pursue their like business goals. And then the second part of your question, it was, sorry, what was the second one?
Where do you find design inspiration when you have to stay at home?
Oh, okay. So I'm trying to make more of a practice of not only like just going outside and not having screens, but just kind of looking at like the different objects that I own and considering how I can, because I think we are very much focused on screens right now, right? And it's like, oh, if you have a problem, there's an app for that. But like a lot of, maybe that's the case in the US, but like a lot of people in different places don't have access to laptops, to tablets, to phones. And so saying, oh, we can just build an app for that, I mean, it doesn't really solve anything if like this demographic can't use it, right? Maybe it's your target demographic, right? And you just like completely missed the point. But I've been finding a lot more inspiration in like the physical objects that I have. So for example, I mentioned being a photographer, right? So I want to share. Okay, well, you all can type it in because I think it's gonna mess up this screen recording. But if you go to forfavoriteframes.com, this was actually like a side project of mine. You know, when I watch films, I often like look for stills that are strong enough to stand on their own. And I would screenshot all of these different things, save it in a folder, but I wouldn't have anywhere to like really put it. I couldn't share this inspiration with other people. And so after finishing the super high course for front-end development, I was like, okay, let's try to build this. And the design of the site at forfavoriteframes.com, it's not what you see like at its like that's typically tech, right? So like Casper or like, I don't know, you know what I mean, like the white minimalism, some photos here, like some really clean photos there, right? And so the design of that website was inspired by my own camera. I remember looking into the viewfinder of my DSLR and being like, oh, this is cool. Like I can draw inspiration from this. And if you go to the about page on that website, you can see like I included a photo at the bottom of what I saw when I was looking through my viewfinder and how that translates to the design of the site. And so, yeah, that's just where I've been trying to draw inspiration from.
That's awesome. That makes me want to go dig my camera out of the closet.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was also going to help like my filmmaking career like later on, because I had this one place, this one source that I could go back to and think like, oh, I really liked the composition here, right? And have that influence how I film things. So
see, this is the result of you manifesting your Oscar.
Keep your fingers crossed for me, hopefully in a few years.
Melanie asked in the chat, what was your manager's involvement and level of interest in your career plan when you presented it? And what did your manager do to support your goals, or what do you wish they had done?
I think considering how enthusiastic I am about literally everything, it's hard for like the person overseeing me to not be like invested in the things that in the things that I share. And I don't mean that in like a conceited way, right? But it's like I'm just so excited about everything that they were like, okay, Lee, like I see where you're going here, and I really like your enthusiasm. Like I mean, there were consistent one-on-ones, right? But also, I mean, I don't know. I think it depends on ultimately where you work, right? Like hopefully you land somewhere where like your manager and your team supports you, and like they remember all the reasons why they hired you. But because I showed such like an interest in my own career development and I consistently brought it up, I made sure to do like a lot of follow-up, but also express interest in like the work that I was doing, right? And so I would say it only piqued their interest, and they like constantly revisited my goals. That's why I encourage sharing this PDF after your meeting, or after performance review season, like whatever it may be, because hopefully your manager is healthy, and then like they can consistently keep your growth and your desired career trajectory in mind. So again, I really didn't have a lot of pushback. Like my manager was really impressed that I took this initiative to begin with. And he was like, Lee, you're actually gonna, I don't think future designers who are hired here are going to like you, because like you've set the standard very high. So it's like, if you don't mind, like if we hire more people under you, then we hope like you can walk them through this and have them plan their own career.
I have a question that I'm not sure how to articulate best, but I have walked through with my manager a framework that is developed by our company. So I don't have a lot of wiggle room with how it is presented, but there is a portion that's addressing a role that you are actively seeking. So I would like a title promotion, and these are the things that I'm going to work on working towards getting that title. How would you approach that within this framework, or would you, or just focusing on the goals that you have addressed from a personal growth area?
I think I believe you sent out 3 different links to attendees beforehand, and one of them was actually a podcast episode, I believe, from like Design Life or something, and it was about going from junior designer to senior designer, right? Like if you're working towards going up in this like hierarchy, then I think one of the hosts had mentioned that like if you're actively applying for this role, look at the responsibilities and just start practicing it, right? So if like one of the responsibilities is actively showcase like, I don't know, business or like strategy know-how in meetings, or like feel comfortable feel comfortable like communicating user research insights with the team, then it was about like living into that role and making sure that you were already practicing those things. I don't think it hurts to include that in your own framework, right? Because you can customize it however you want, but just showing that initiative that you're like not just like willing to learn to be in that role, but that like you're already prepared to do it, because look at like the past 6 months, you've already been doing it, right?
That's helpful, thank you. Anybody else have questions you want to sneak in here before we do breakout rooms? I think I've asked all my questions. I didn't want to hog the questionability, but I also am very curious and like to ask a lot of questions. But I would love to get just a tiny dose of your enthusiasm, like doled out to each of us, that we could take back to our office. That could be our like
bottle it
gift from this event. That would be great.
A dram of Lee, right?
Yes.
Yes.
That's awesome. Lee, this was a really great presentation, and thank you so much for sharing the insights that you've had. I was curious, do you feel like these questions or, this approach modifies across stages of your career or across entry points, like when you're starting a job versus when you've been there a year, or looking at transitioning to a different role? Do you feel like the questions or these approaches would modify in any major ways that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so I think this framework is applicable, at any point in your career. I mean, even if you're a CEO, right? So during the interview process, one of the recruiters was really hyping up the CEO of a company to me, and it's like, you can still grow even when you're at the top, right? So for example, she had shared with me that they sent out this survey that was like, how do you think our CEO is doing? And something that he received was like, oh, you know, he could communicate better. And this was like a general response amongst like all the survey responses. And it's like, well, if you can improve your communication skills, I mean, that's something I can do. And I'm still in the early stages of my career, and they're like a CEO or the founder of the company. They're at the top, but they too can also, that's something that they can also improve, right? And so in terms of modifications, I don't know how much, I mean, if someone, I spoke to a lot of like people who were in the same position or like stage I was while I was doing those one-on-one calls. I don't think I spoke to many, if any, like directors or like managers. So I don't know how much insight I can give there, but if anyone in this group is a manager or director, or in like the later stages of your career, if you want to just regroup in a few months time or like a year or something, then I would love to know if this framework worked for you. Sorry, I couldn't answer your question, Courtney.
No, that's okay, because I fall into that last bucket. So I'm new to UX. So I'm later in an existing career and migrating into UX and trying to, you know, navigate accurately. Be as efficient with the remaining time that I have before I croak. So, so this was helpful though.
I'm glad.
Well, definitely don't want to cut off anyone who has a burning question. So cut me off if you have one. But I do want to take the time that we have left to go into breakout groups of 2 or 3 people, and not to put anyone on the spot, but I have found that I often personally get access to great resources and then sit on them and don't follow through with them. And so we've carved out this time for you to be able to put these things into practice. And while Lee is still with us, be able to ask her questions as you are starting to think through this for yourself, and to think through it together, because we can all benefit from each other's experiences.
Because that was one of the goals I had, obviously, like to get better at presenting. And I came across a few resources. I'll be sure to send them to Meredith so she can send them out. But it was like a variety of videos that was like, you know, this is how you plan the structure for your talk, or like it was just like different tips and tricks that people who had spoken so often over the years, they just kind of like you know, brought them together and then put them in a video. So I'll be sure to share that resource.
Thanks. That would be cool. Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
So Lee, are you open to being pinged from time to time with other follow-up questions that might occur later?
Of course.
I mean, it's not like you don't like to talk or anything. So.
I'm surprised I talked to as many, or like had as many one-on-one calls with people as I did. I actually gave people a choice. Hey, so I can schedule some time with you. It'll be like 30 to 45 minutes. I'll schedule some time with you to walk you through this framework that I have. Like it's that, you know, black and yellow PDF, the gray and yellow PDF. And I'll, you know, kind of share my specific examples from my own goals. Or I can just send you this PDF, right? Like if people were too busy, or if they just didn't feel comfortable talking to me through like Zoom or whatever, then it'd be like, okay, I'll just send the PDF and like the links that Meredith included in the event description. And so, of course, I love talking to like internet people online. I do it all the time, willingly.
You were the poster child for an extrovert, and I admire. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for making yourself available for all of this and just sharing some of your enthusiasm. Super awesome. Before everybody drops off, I'm going to put a link to an event survey here. So we always want to keep getting feedback and be able to continue improving. So please share your thoughts in the survey. And then also, if anybody is interested in helping just get involved with future events, we have several coming up in September. Just reach out to us on Slack. Ileana is not on the call tonight, but she helps with the event graphics for this evening's event. And then Janelli is on the call, and she helped with some back-end logistics as well. So there are a lot of little ways to get involved and get to know the other facilitators better. So let us know if that's something you'd like to be involved in. And then we'll be sending out the recording and all of Lee's awesome resources as soon as we can put them all together in a list. The list keeps growing. So we'll see how long that takes to put together. But if nobody has any last questions, we'll let Lee get back to her evening.
Thank you, Lee. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Please feel free to reach out whenever. I'm gonna be here. It's the internet. So thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Much.